My name's John McGrath. I'm Artistic Director of Factory International, and Aviva Studios is our new home. We're really proud to welcome you here today, and we look forward to showing you around and talking to you about what's going to be happening here. It has been an extraordinary journey to get to this point, and many people have been part of that journey, working with great commitment, fortitude, and an ongoing sense of hope to imagine and build the space that we see around us today. We're going to be hearing from and seeing a number of those people throughout the morning. We're going to be hearing from the Right Honourable Lucy Fraser, Secretary of State for Culture, from Bev Craig, Leader of Manchester City Council, and from Nick Sirota, Chairman of the Arts Council, all of whom are going to be introducing the building from their perspective. It has been an extraordinary coalition of people and of organisations and of fortitude and vision to make all of this come together. I'm later on also going to be sharing a little bit about some of the work that's going on here, because first and foremost, this is a space to fill with artists, creativity and audiences. You'll be going on a tour of the building and seeing some of the things that it can do. The vision of this building, created by our architect, Ellen Van Loon of the wonderful OMA. Ellen, would you like to give us a wave? Are you there? The vision of this building is to create one vast, extraordinary space at the heart that can be used in many different ways by different artists and creatives. I've had the joy in recent weeks and months of welcoming some of the world's most famous and respected artists to this space. And the single question that they all have for me is, when can I do something here? It's the easiest job I've ever had to sell this space to artists and to plan with them for their ideas and realizing their vision in these beautiful spaces. So a huge thanks to Ellen on this very special day for the vision that she's brought and the sense of collaboration and spirit and love of artists and creativity that she's brought. We also have many people from Factory International around, including Tom Bloxham, our chair, who's guided us at every single stage in this journey. So Tom's modelling his Yo-Yo Kusama hat today, and for our preview of the building, we had an amazing Kusama exhibition. So a few people could have a chair who's so on brand as Tom Bloxham. Sheena Wrigley, Randall Bryan, Ki-Hong Lo are all in the audience today as well. They're the executive team here at Aviva Studios, Hannah Cork as well, and be really happy to answer any questions about the many different strands of work that are involved in bringing something like this together. But as I say, the building itself is at the heart of our celebrations today. The magnificent warehouse and hall, one big L-shaped space that you can look at from different directions, work through in different ways, and imagine really seemingly impossible things in. That hall and that warehouse meet this social space that we're in, which has already become a kind of living room or town hall for Manchester. I swear I imagined months and months of work to entice people into the building in a corner of the city that hasn't been well known historically. We opened the doors and it felt like Manchester just walked in, pulled out a chair, got a cup of tea, got on the phone, called their neighbours and invited them around. It's a wonderful, warm feeling of a space. And I think for those of you who see the show tonight, you'll really see the entire space taken over by our creative team. The core creative team are going to be talking to us later on, so I will introduce them in a moment. But for now, I'd like to introduce the Secretary of State.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much, John, both for that introduction and for your phenomenal work in putting, and everybody's work in putting this together. I am absolutely delighted to be with you all today on what is a big day, not just for Manchester, but for the whole of the UK. The largest purpose-built arts venue of its kind in the world. The new home of Manchester International Festival. The biggest investment in a UK cultural project since the Tate Modern in London over 2 decades ago. Aviva Studios is already special, and it's a testament to the brilliant partnership that is responsible for the development of this venue. Government, creative organisations, local leaders, local authorities, and other stakeholders all pulling in the same direction. And the end result is a venue that is going to be part of our cultural landscape for years to come in a city that is steeped in culture. From Lowry to Oasis and the Stone Roses, Manchester has always punched above its weight culturally. And these studios are going to help us extend this reputation for cultural excellence long into the future. A venue that will give every young, aspiring musician or artist, fest or designer a venue they can dream of one day showcasing their talents in. It will add to the unique identity of a city Orwell once described as the belly and guts of the nation. And is going to help grow Greater Manchester's vibrant local economy. This is a local economy that already contributes some £75 billion to our national economy every year. And thanks to this new landmark, it should see an extra £1.1 billion over the next decade alone. With 1,500 jobs in our thriving cultural and creative sectors, plus the wider visitor economy, Aviva Studios will also be an important part of the city's local job market. And one of the things that I was thrilled to hear about is the new Factory Academy, a skills and training programme for young people in Manchester and the surrounding areas. This is exactly the sort of scheme we as a government want to see and what we're trying to foster through our creative industries sector vision. That long-term blueprint for the creative industries has a pipeline of talent at its heart, and it's clear that Aviva Studios is going to be a major contributor to that pipeline, helping encourage young people to go into the creative industries and giving them the belief that they can grow up and do a job that they love in their home city. So, thank you all for joining. This striking landmark in what used to be a Victorian cotton metropolis is a symbol of the city's 21st century resurgence. And today is just the beginning.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the Secretary of State for her words. So I'm Bev Craig, I'm the leader of Manchester City Council, and I think when we open this building today collectively, I think we have both joy and indeed just a sigh of relief to reach this point. And particularly I think the creative team and Factory International teams have been phenomenal in getting us here, and I'll come on to thanks later. But I want to talk about why this is so important for a city like Manchester, why it means so much to us, and why we fought so hard to see this come to fruition throughout the decades. So the story of Manchester is one that is often well told and well rehearsed, a city that exported across the world, that was known for its heart at the Industrial Revolution, a city that was also known to be at the forefront of its fight for social justice. But a city, like many across the world in the 60s, the 70s and the 80s, that struggled with post-industrial decline. A city that struggled with a world's global reputation, knowing where its direction went next. And over the last 20 years, what we've seen in the city has been a phenomenal resurgence. It's been a growth. The growth hasn't just been focused on what it's meant for our economy. So to take Manchester in the early 90s as a struggling economy, to becoming one of the fastest growing tech cities in Europe, to have a cultural and creative economy that's worth £1.4 billion every year in the city alone, the biggest and fastest growing outside of London in Europe. But at the heart of this change, at the heart of the creation of tens of thousands of new jobs, at the heart of the attraction and the retention of an extra 200,000 residents in the last 20 odd years is something else. It's our commitment to what it means to live in an exciting and thriving city. It's our commitment to culture. And we've often talked about culture, not just as a tool for our economic regeneration, but as something that sits as the heart and the spirit of what it means to have a good life, to enjoy a city and a place that thrives. And as we've reached this point today, we think about some of the other steps that we've taken as a city over the last 2 decades. They told us when we built the Bridgewater Hall that people wouldn't come. They told us as we continue to invest in things like Home Manchester, Manchester Museum, the creation of the South Asia Gallery, which puts the ability for people to tell their own stories and create their own narrative in a different lens. We see next door the work that's happening at the Science and Industry Museum. We look at what's happened with the Whitworth Art Gallery, and we see the advent and attraction of Co-op Live next year. But having Aviva Studios offers something special, something that's different and lacking, not just in Manchester or across the north of England, but the UK as a whole. And that's why we've remained so committed to it. Because if we think about Manchester's history as an exporter across the globe, we think about the role that we have to play in the next 2-3 decades around exporting our culture, being able to take the work that international artists and Mancunian artists create and help it travel the world and put Manchester on the map. But I also want to talk about what it means, not just for culture and not just for our artistic scene in Manchester. There has been a focus on our economic regeneration, and for those of you that know the city well, you will know that as we stand on the sites of the former abandoned Granada Studios, up until a few years ago, there wasn't much happening in this bit of the city. And I think the work that Ellen and the team at OMA have been able to do to take a very tight, geographically confined piece of land and turn it into a global attraction is no mean feat. But we look outside, we see next door, we see global headquarters of Booking.com, the relocation of Clyde Emporium, we see the development of Middlewood Locks across the River Irwell. None of these things would have happened without Aviva Studios as that instigator of regeneration. And when we talk about what it means for Mancunians, it's why we don't just focus on the 1,500 jobs that it's created, but we talk about Factory Academy. We talk about the ability to create new jobs for Manchester people to change their view as to what the future holds. Because fundamentally the story of Manchester is the Manchester in the 80s and 90s where people had to leave the city to be able to thrive, to be able to experience opportunity, to have good jobs, to live a life where they excelled in our creative economies, where they left and went to London. This is about saying something fundamental. It's about talking about that aspiration we see in our schools across the city, that you can do anything in this city, you can be anyone in this city. So as we reach the next few days, where I think we'll have a great time experiencing some of what Aviva Studios will hold, we have to think about this in its broader context. We have to think about the benefit that it brings Manchester, but what it says also for the north of England, that culture can do well outside of capital cities, not just in the UK, but across Europe, and we see it time and time again. So I want to try, and it's always a risk when a politician stands up and attempts to do thank yous. There's always a panic that comes that you forget someone. But I want to just say this has been a collective team effort. I've been leader of the city for 2 years, but this plan predates often many of us in this room. So beginning by thanking the team at Manchester City Council, and that includes my predecessors, Sir Richard Leese and Sir Howard Bernstein, for the leadership that they took in bringing this forward, and the team that have worked so incredibly hard over the last decade to get us here. To DCMS for their support, because we talk about the money that this brought into the city that would not otherwise have come. So this truly has been a partnership. And of course, our partnership with Arts Council England and the support that they've shown throughout this process. To the team at Factory International, We've had many, many meetings over the last few years to get us where we have. But I think that creative vision is something that is unrivaled and will serve us well in the city. To Ellen and the team at OMA for giving us an architecturally fantastic building that lets us do a plethora of exciting things in the city. To Lang O'Rourke and our contractors for getting us to this point. To our funders, particularly to Aviva, what we've seen with our multi-year, multi-million pounds deal has surpassed even our expectations and is the largest private sector investment in arts and culture in this country. To the Factory Academy team for never giving up on our young people and making sure that their aspirations have a path to follow. And of course the creative team that are going to give us an excellent show in Free Your Mind. So this is a collective effort, but it's the beginning of our story. And hopefully when we look back on what we've opened and launched today in years to come, we see it as the start. So thank you.
I'm Nick Surrey, I'm Chair of Arts Council of England, and I could say, follow that. Bev, that was extraordinary, and Lucy also, thank you. Arts organisations that flourish have ambition, and there's no doubt about the ambition here today that Aviva Studios, and embodied in a sense in John, as the director of the Factory International and Manchester International Festival. But they also need roots. They need roots in their community. When Sidney Bernstein created the television company Granada and created these studios here on this site, he had the ambition, as he put it, to establish a creative industry that was not part of the metropolitan atmosphere of the capital city, that it had its own distinct identity. So that's a route that this building already has in this community. But the other route, of course, is the success of the Manchester International Festival since the first in 2007. And I want to pay tribute to Alex Poots and John McGrath as the directors. But I also want to pay tribute to the person who's been the chair of Manchester International Festival for the past more than 20 years,